Okay, we had a little technical difficulty, but I think we're on Zoom now, so we should be okay. But how about we pick up where you first started drinking? Like when was your first drink?
Okay, yeah. So I don't remember my exact first drink. I'm thinking it was somewhere in high school. I didn't really drink much in high school, but I did have a couple of incidents.
That's where the shenanigans usually begin.
Right, right. But by the time I graduated from high school the summer before college and then just into college, I was, drinking a lot. What I considered to be just regular young person party drinking, but it
Yeah.
was pretty much regularly.
Yeah. Did you have like this like the symptoms, right? Like blacking out or like alcohol poisoning, like being really sick the next day? Did you have those in the beginning?
Yeah, absolutely. I can remember, well, I didn't know anything about my tolerance. I didn't have any, well, I mean, I don't think anybody does when they first start drinking, but I
Yeah.
just assumed that I could just drink as much as I wanted. And so I remember one of the first times that I drank a bottle of Arbor Mist wine out of a straw.
Yeah.
It was peach wine, peach Arbor Mist
Delicious.
wine. Yeah. And so I was just brutally sick the next day. And, that was probably the combination of the crappy sugar involving the Arbor Mist plus the alcohol. But yeah, from early on, I would always, when I was binge drinking, I would black out. I couldn't remember anything. People were always taking care of me. I'm the one they're dragging
Oh,
from
you were
the,
that girl.
yeah, exactly,
No
exactly.
shame. So was I actually.
Oh, so fun
You
times.
know, what's interesting is your statement of I thought I could drink as much as I wanted. And what I kind of keyed into was like those of us who develop issues with alcohol, it's like what we want to drink is way disproportionate to our abilities.
Right. Yeah, that makes perfect sense now because I just was like, I mean, I wanted to drink from the time that before people started coming over, before the party started until way into the night, and I just
Yeah.
didn't think, I mean, I thought I could and I thought that that would be fine. And so I
Yeah.
did.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen people who like sip their drinks, and so those are the people that do drink all night. But
Mhm.
I wasn't a sipper. Were you a sipper?
No, definitely
No,
not. No.
no. Chugging seemed appropriate. I guess
Yeah.
that's encouraged in college too, right?
Right. Yeah. I mean, it didn't seem any different. And, after a few drinks, I couldn't tell the difference between who was sipping and who was binge drinking along with me, so I just thought we were all having a fine time.
I'm sure some of you were.
Right.
Yeah, and I think like environment is really interesting because like you grew up in an environment of drinking, so it looked normal,
hmm
and they were probably the sippers, right? And then when you get into college, everyone's drinking, so it just feels natural according to the environment that you're in. Makes
Yeah,
perfect sense.
absolutely.
So when did drinking become a problem for you? Like you mentioned, people having to take care of you and stuff. Was that kind of the beginning of it?
Well, I no, I wouldn't say so. I think that during that time, so many people were binge drinking and it was just one of those things where you would just kind of laugh it off, it didn't seem like a big deal. I would say that I started noticing it really having an impact once I was well into, being an adult out of college.
All right.
It was when I stopped really partying and binge drinking and going out to bars. I mean, that was problematic for sure, and there were so many things wrong with that time, but it really became when I was drinking every night at home, like
Mm,
I wasn't partying anymore. I had both before I had my first child and after, we were doing the adult responsible thing, which is just staying in, having a glass of wine with dinner, which was really a bottle of wine or more. And really then I had my first child. And then after that, I had pretty awful postpartum depression. And then, of course,
mm,
we had a baby, so we're not going out anywhere. So then it's just drinking all the time, every day, versus binge drinking on Saturdays, and then being hungover all day on Sunday and recovering for a few days. It's more of
right.
just drinking consistently.
Yeah.
I wasn't really, um, Well, I mean, I was sometimes, blacking out, but not like partying, if that makes any sense. I mean, I was just at home doing what I'm supposed to be doing, also while drunk,
Yeah.
and drinking.
How did the alcohol affect your postpartum depression? Did it make it worse or
Oh,
did it? Yeah.
I mean, I thought it was making it better, I mean, and it did. Going back to the Annie Gray, scientifically now I know how it worked. It really did take the edge off so well in the first 5 or 10 minutes. I mean, I just immediately just could breathe out, could relax, and I felt
Mhm.
wonderful. But, within 25 minutes, the cycle begins, my body starts, all the chemicals go haywire, everything starts going wrong. And, then I'd have 2 or 3 drinks, and then I'm just like really grumpy in a worse mood than I was before,
Yeah.
and really just feeling pretty low. And then then it's affecting my sleep. I was waking up, I would fall asleep slash pass out.
Pass out. Yeah.
Yeah. And then, I'd wake up at, 2 in the morning, racing thoughts, sweating
Yeah.
profusely,
Yeah.
horrible anxiety, which was really, I mean, it was the postpartum depression slash anxiety, and then the chemicals of alcohol on top of that. And it was just miserable. And then the guilt and the shame.
Oh, yeah, that's the worst part. How
Yeah.
do you think it was affecting your parenting?
Um, you know, I I think when I look back, when I'm really honest with myself, I mean, it wasn't great that I was, sometimes, passed out when I had a baby or two at home. They might have cried a little longer before I heard them or woke up to them. I always was doing the responsible thing. This was part of the whole package was just like do your yeah 100%, giving to the kids so much so that I was neglecting myself completely, which
Right.
was
Yeah.
and so I do look back. I have these memories of like waking up in the morning and they would come to me in their cute little onesie pajamas, and I couldn't remember that I'd put that pair on them and being like, oh, I picked out a cute pair of pajamas for them, and then just feeling really ashamed about that. I mean, they luckily, I'm just so thankful that somebody, I mean, my husband and I mean, I think we were coherent enough to care for them and nothing dangerous ever happened.
Yeah.
Because I never really had like this rock bottom horrible thing that really happened. It was
Right.
just a perpetual self-hatred,
Oh,
self-loathing, that just ate ate at me, every day ongoing.
yeah. I mean, that creates such a vicious cycle that, you wake up and you're like full of self-loathing and you beat yourself up. And so your self-esteem takes a hit. And by the end of the day, it's like, you know, needing a little, and then the alcohol increasing your baseline level of cortisol. So you feel like you need something to take the edge off. And then the cycle begins.
Exactly. I mean, I woke up every morning. I'm never drinking again. I'm feeling so guilty. I'm being an extra good parent. I'm, overcompensating for everything. I
Oh,
call it
yeah.
shame running. I'm, going out for the best run, and I'm, doing planks, and I'm eating organic, you know,
Eating organic while consuming poison. Yeah,
right.
makes sense. Yeah.
Exactly. And then, noon comes around. I'm like, well, I'm feeling pretty good. Maybe I can have a drink. And then 5 o'clock, I'm just right back into the same cycle. And,
Yeah.
I lived like that for a long time.
That's exhausting.
Yeah.
What happened that you decided to stop?
So my anxiety, I mean, it was just again, now knowing what I know, like the cortisol, I mean, I just could not escape it. And I had a pretty rough weekend of just again, it was supposed to be like a social family thing. My family invited another family. We went to the lake for the weekend. And everybody's just having a good time. Kids are swimming, and I'm just completely blacked out. I mean, I'm can't
Mm.
slurring my speech. I can't say anything coherent. I'm not, I mean, I'm throwing up in front of the neighbor, the people that we
Oh,
invited their children. I mean, just really awful stuff.
so embarrassing.
Yeah, exactly. And I woke up that day and I was just like, I cannot. I mean, the anxiety was just so bad. Like I was having just really low thoughts. Like I don't even like to talk about them, but like a little like not suicidal, but like I don't care if I live anymore. Like
Right.
if
Pretty
something bad
dark.
yeah, if something bad happens, it's fine. Just put me out of my misery kind of thing.
Yeah.
Um, and so I was like, I'd been getting like this for a while, like I can like leading up to that for about a month. Every time I drank, I was just feeling so grumpy. I was like picking fights with people, and my husband and I had a date night, and I picked a fight with him, and we ended up just going home early because he couldn't even be out out with me anymore because I'm just full of like anger and angst.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I woke up that next day and I was just like, God, I don't think I can live like this anymore. And I don't know, I Googled, I was thinking how cool I was because I drank. I'm sure many, many people listening to this can relate, but I thought that drinking, was really elevating my, personality.
Mm. I think we all have that delusion. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I kind of, I didn't know that I hadn't had like hit a rock bottom, okay? And I didn't think that my mental health was enough of a rock bottom to justify kind of not drinking. Like I just wasn't
Right.
connecting my mental health to the actual to it being perpetuated by the alcohol. And I
Right.
just, couldn't figure that out at all. And so I would after these incidences of like self-loathing and shame, I would go like on a 3-day juice diet because I'm like, maybe I'm, eating too many carbs and I really need to cut back on, you know.
Yeah.
So I'm like trying all these things. And then I just had like this little tiny sound or whisper. And it was like, what about the alcohol? Like, have you ever thought about the alcohol? And
Yeah.
so I just kind of I think I was just so low. I just kind of let myself explore this idea.
Mm.
And so it was slow, it wasn't like this. I woke up in jail and whatever. It was just kind of the slow thing where I just eventually allowed myself to consider the alcohol possibility. And then once I did, then I really I started learning a lot
Yeah.
about the way that it affects, mental health and anxiety specifically.
Is that when you came across the Annie Grace book,
Yeah.
The Snake in Mine?
Yeah, I came across a blog. I'm sure you've heard of Holly Whitaker. It was called Hip Sobriety.
Hmm.
And I just kind of liked, again, going back to my childhood, in my mind, everybody who had issues with alcohol were like a male. For some reason, I couldn't identify a single female. Like
Mm.
either, I don't know why, but it was like in my life or even on screens, it was always like this
Right.
older male, portrayal of like this old guy's outside of a, church smoking a cigarette in between, meetings. And so that never even occurred to me as like being an option, And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
I found this blog and this was like a younger woman. And so that
Yeah.
was, I think, first, it makes so much sense to me, like needing to be able to relate because I
Oh,
wasn't
yeah.
on social media at the time. Like,
And how
I'm,
long, what time period is this?
this was in 2017. So,
Oh, okay.
yeah,
Is when you came across the blog and
yeah,
really started questioning it. And
yeah. And that's
you're,
when,
did you ever have like family members address your drinking, like express concern, like your husband or your mom or?
yeah. So my husband, it's funny because he's now sober. He doesn't drink anymore.
Okay.
And he, we drank together and I would drink as much as he was drinking. Um, except he's a lot he's bigger than me. His body isn't the same as mine in terms of like genetic makeup. I mean, he can
Mhm.
metabolize alcohol much differently. And it was
Yeah.
always like this joke, like, oh, Samantha's blacked out again, or like we just really normalized it. I
Okay.
mean, we just really, really normalized it.
So
And
he was never like, girl, you need to calm down.
I mean, yeah, he was like, girl, you need to get your shit together. Sorry. But it
But
wasn't
but
not
yeah,
not like
he never said you need to stop drinking.
no,
Like alcohol
no,
doesn't work for you.
no, no. That would have been nice.
Well, it's interesting that you had to come to the conclusion by yourself.
Hmm.
Like that was a conclusion. Like, those of us who were a little out there with our drinking, like I had people telling me, you should not drink.
Right.
I had people who were partying just as much as I was that were saying, I think you have a problem. And I was so offended.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I'm
I was
sure.
like, you drink just as much as I do,
Right.
but. but I started hearing the messages, but I knew already for myself that it was a problem. So it's interesting that you kind of had to come to that conclusion on your own without any sort of outside pressure.
Yeah, yeah. And now that you say it, like it was a very lonely process for me,
Was
because
it?
yeah, well, I was so confused about the world again, like I just didn't know what was out there. And again, I'm sure that, so many of your listeners can relate to this, but I thought I'm the only person in the whole world who's experiencing this, who has a
Yeah,
little bit of a problem with alcohol but hasn't hit a rock bottom. I mean, I literally was like, I'm going to continue drinking like this until I wreck my car into a tree because that's what I thought had to happen before I could stop drinking.
right,
And I
right.
think honestly, when it comes to the community of the people that I was with at the time, I think they all thought that too. I mean, I think there still is this kind of stigma that, as long as you're going to work and you're taking care of your family and you're, not being, destructive or harming anyone or harming yourself, like, um,
Then it's okay.
then it's okay. And so I
Yeah.
really believe that's why no one ever mentioned anything because kind of we didn't have the information.
Right, right. So how did you so you found the blog and started gathering information, and what was the turning point for you? Was there a time where you were like, okay, like you planted your flag in the ground, as they say, and like, okay, I am not going to drink starting today. Like, how
Yeah.
did that play out for you?
I basically, from the blog, she recommended some books, and I got all the books, and I really kind of used her, whatever she did, I did, you know,
Nice. Yeah.
because I didn't know any other way. So I just
Yeah.
whatever I read that she suggested, I was like, I'll just do that. And
Okay.
it's cool because this was a stranger, still is, a stranger on the internet.
Yeah.
And so I did tell my husband, I was like, I think I'm gonna not again, I'm gonna not drink for 30 days, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a safe bet.
Yeah.
Bet.
Yeah. So I set out to not drink for 30 days. And during the 30 days, I mean, I was just I was reading a lot, read a ton of other books, including Annie Grace's, a lot of memoirs.
Yeah.
Um,
Do you recall the other books you were reading at the time?
I read, I think you've had her on the podcast, Girl Walks Out of a Bar.
Uh-huh.
Um, Lisa, I can't think of her last
Lisa
name, but
Smith.
yeah, Lisa
Yeah,
Smith.
she's amazing.
Yeah, I read that one. I read, I think it was, I'm getting kind of sticky with the timeline, but The Unexpected Joy of
Oh,
Being
being sober.
Sober.
Yeah.
And then there was Sober Curious.
Oh, Ruby
Yeah,
Warrington.
Ruby. Yeah. So I started
Yeah.
reading those. Um, I mean, I continued with the blog. Laura McCowan was writing. I think you've also
Yeah,
had
I
her.
interviewed her too. Yeah, she did she has the luckiest club.
Yeah, so that it was before that. It was just kind of like her blog.
Oh, okay.
So I was just read her stories in her blog. And I equate this to like what I felt then was just like this horrible breakup, like and I
Yeah.
wrote in my book, like I felt like I was discovering that the love of my life had another family down the down the street. Like I
Such
felt
betrayal.
yes, I felt so betrayed. I mean, again, it was just this breakup and I mourned. I mean, I wallowed around in bed. I acted like, I was just I felt sick all the time, a little bit from my mood, but also from the withdrawal of just having drinking and the adrenaline. And so I really just for that 30 days, I mean, I suffered.
Yeah. Did you have
But
any kind of support? Did you know community or anything?
I didn't I said that my books, like these people, they were my community because
Oh, yeah.
I just would like retreat back to my bed and just read and read and read and really
Yeah.
like rely on these women who are telling their stories to just, for kind of support and knowing that I wasn't alone. But
Yeah.
it was a really, again, like I didn't have access to, I didn't know the cool, awesome, Instagram world of sobriety like I do now. And I
Yeah. I have
didn't,
mixed.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, I think we talked before. I was like, I have mixed feelings about that because anybody can just throw up, create an account and be like, I'm a sober influencer with 5 days sober. Those people
Yeah.
scare me a little bit.
Right. I know it can be super dangerous, but also like I think I was really lucky. Like I just stumbled across all the right people. It was like I
Nice.
found one right person who was following this good person who was following this good person. And so by the time I got around, I felt like the group. I mean, I just now I think that many of these people, I mean, like Laura McCowan and um they're all considered, I think, like positive influences in
Yeah,
the
for sure.
in the world for sure.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
um, but yeah, the first month it was just super hard and lonely. And I think that I'd been at trying for so long. Like it wasn't just this isn't my first time trying.
Right. Yeah.
It was my first time being honest, with what
Oh,
was
yeah.
happening. Um, and I was really coming from this because I was letting myself mourn. I was coming from this from like a really self-love, kind of like, I'm so sorry, like, I'm sorry that this happened to you. And I'm just so
Mm.
sorry that this is what's going on right now, versus what I'd done before, which was I'm gonna, beat myself up and I'm gonna for the next 10 days, I'm gonna just, eat greens and run and work out and, hate myself.
Yeah.
Even more than I already do. So,
Yeah.
um, I was coming from it from a different place, just allowing myself to really like grieve. And I think that
Yeah.
helped a lot.
Self-compassion is huge. I mean, I firmly believe that you cannot hate yourself well. Like
Yes.
it doesn't work like that. And so interesting to hear that once you made the shift to practicing self-compassion, that's when you were able to open up and start healing, really.
Right, right, right.
Healing from all the, self-criticism and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you have any experience with community or maybe old traditional ways of recovery? Did you have any experiences with those communities?
So at first I did not. And it was for the whole first year, I was kind of just on my own.
Wow, a year. That's a long
Y-
time.
Yeah. And for the first little bit, I mean, I was really on my own because I'm like, I don't know what's happening here. And so I'm going to just I didn't want other people
Lay
to,
low.
yeah, like I didn't want to say, oh, I'm not, I'm sober now, I'm not drinking. And then, 5 days later, I'm drinking again. Like I really just wanted to like think a little bit. It was really the first
Mhm.
time I'd had any time with my brain or my thoughts or my
Yeah,
heart in so
I
long.
know.
And so I really, for such a long time, I was kind of at it alone. So when I was 1 year sober, I just posted, of course, on Facebook because I'm like, I've made it a year, therefore, I am
It's a
healed.
pretty safe bet.
I can
Yeah,
ride off.
I'm healed.
I can ride off into the sunset on my, unicorn.
I have been healed. Witness for all.
Right, exactly. And so I said something, and then so many people started reaching out, and that was awesome. And so
Wow.
that kind of propelled me to want to talk about it a little bit more. And then, like, then I had a community because they were coming to me like, oh, wow, how did you do this? I had no idea. What was your story? I think I'm drinking too much. What did you do?
Wow.
So I really developed a little bit of a community then. And then some people reached out to me who I had no idea that they were sober. But they were, they went to AA and they were like, oh, wow, I'm 10 years sober. And I'm like, what? Wow. Like I had no idea. Um, and I did I was really pumped to be invited to go to an AA meeting here. And, I think, first of all, I was just so naive. I knew nothing. And so I'm coming at it from like this very scientific approach of like, alcohol really is a poisonous chemical, and it is making everything in my life worse. And so, I go to my first meeting and I'm like, hey, everybody, like I'm like, we all hate alcohol and screw, screw alcohol. Alcohol's the problem, and I love myself now. And I kind of got in there and I don't know when I look back, I think like, is this my perception of what it was? Or was is this really what happened? Or is it a combination of both? But it seemed like it was more of like, I'm the problem. Like that people were feeling like they were the problem. And I had
Mhm.
just come out of just so many years of hating myself.
Oh, right.
And when I
Yeah.
hear that, I'm like, I can't, like this isn't,
Yeah.
And again, the people there were wonderful and welcoming and super lovely, but I had already kind of like learned I had a different voice in my head. And so I kind of
Yeah,
just adhered
yeah.
to that because that's what felt safe, you know?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And so, after that, I started writing a little bit of a blog, and then people really kind of just started
They were
reaching out.
responding to
They
that.
were, yeah.
Yeah.
And so then I kind of created a community of my own
Nice.
that was just kind of like, meet, can we meet for coffee so we can talk about this? And it felt so
Yeah.
great. I call it
Yeah.
sober blind dates now because I still get people who are like, would you want to have coffee? Because I'm not, I don't coach, I'm not teaching about, sobriety, but I'm
Yeah.
happy to tell people, my story. And so then I'm just having conversations with people. And,
Yeah.
over the years, I grew a little community of people
Nice.
that had similar experiences, a lot of like mom friends who had
Yeah.
postpartum depression, who had some mental illness,
Right.
and
Yeah.
just learned the way that alcohol was affecting that.
Yeah, no, I just want to acknowledge and really appreciate your perspective of what an affront it can be to come out of such a shameful experience and then find self-compassion and self-love only to be confronted with ideas that I'm the problem, right?
Yeah.
And that's kind of one of the things I wish we could reframe about that. Um, because I feel like it's close, but it kind of misses something really important, which is I'm at the center of my decisions and my behaviors, and I need to take responsibility for what's, within my control and stuff like that. So I kind of wish I wish we could reframe that in a different ways, like instead of saying things like character defects, those are really survival skills, right? Like,
Right.
do you know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, so, and listen, when I got sober 30 years ago, there was literally nothing else.
No.
And I was in so much shame. And I knew I was the problem. Like
Right.
I had friends who could drink and I knew I couldn't. So I was
Hmm.
like, oh, clearly I'm the problem.
Right.
Right. And they were like, yeah, you are. So do these things, do it different. Here's how you do it different. And I was like, cool.
Right.
I needed so I was just like in a different mind space. I think if I had gotten sober today, I probably may have done something more like what you have done and completely miss like the magic of the 12 steps, like the process. I always have to advocate. I always feel so, because that's like what saved my life. I feel like I have to advocate for the process while staying open to the fact that you don't have to do it that way.
Right. Well, and I do know now, and it's funny because so many of the women that I am kind of surrounded by, like many of them, after a certain period of time, they do want more community. And so I've found now through knowing them, like there are so many different places that I could have gone, so many different meetings, and I probably wouldn't have been met with maybe that feeling. And again, it was a different time. Like I feel like now
Yeah.
I'd walk in with just so much more openness. And now I know more about that recovery process where I didn't know
Yeah.
anything before. And
Yeah.
so I do, I was talking once with a friend of mine, and she's like 25 years sober. And she was like, we were talking about AA, and she was just like, but why do you do it alone when you can have all of this magic? And I was like, I hear you. And I would do it, but I did it without, and now it's like a time thing, and I'm kind of on my I'm okay now. I don't need that as much as I would have in the beginning. And so
Yeah.
but yeah, I totally, I in no way blame that meeting. Like I said, it was probably just where I was at the time, and I was just
Well,
so protective of my
yeah.
kind of like liberation from this hatred thing that and so and a little bit freed from knowing just the science around alcohol that that really
Yeah.
I mean it made sense that I would grab another drink because it's a super addictive chemical, not just because I was
Yeah.
completely flawed,
And to be fair to you, I mean, shame is a very painful, difficult, and it sounds like you had enough, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And when you're sensitive to like when you've come out of it and but you're still kind of sensitive to it,
Yeah.
it's I could see how it would be hard to stomach.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I'm writing a whole book about like a 12-step guide for skeptics because
Oh yeah.
yeah, the hill I will die on is that it's and you can still do it. Like you can still do the 12-step process and like number one, you don't have to go to meetings or it
Right.
doesn't have to like you can reframe all the things that there's just a way to get past all that stuff. So because the process itself is pretty cool.
And I think that's super interesting. And I would love to read your book. And I just recently came across something. It was a guy and he was using the 12 steps for he's not an alcoholic, he's just using the 12 steps because they
Yeah.
enhance his life, and I
Yeah,
love
yeah.
that. I love that
Yeah.
concept. And yeah, I think that that book would be super, super helpful because
Yeah.
and now I just know there are so many different ways
Yeah, there are.
and it's good for
They're
everyone
all
because
legitimate. Yeah,
exactly,
they're all
exactly.
legitimate. Yeah, whatever brings you peace. Um, yeah, well, can we talk about your book though? Because listen, congratulations on writing and publishing this book, Alive AF. AF. It could be taken a couple different ways. I think you mean
Alcohol
alcohol
free.
free.
Yes, I do.
I love it. Alive alcohol free. Tell me a little bit about like the writing process, what's in the book. What do you love most about the book?
Yeah, thank you for asking about that. I really, it's funny because when my editor, when I was working with her, I had loved writing and I'd actually started a couple of blogs like long before blogging was even a thing. And now I think I should have really stuck with it because I would probably be making a lot of
Yeah, you'd be
money.
famous
I
now.
know. At least I could get an ad or something going on.
Yeah.
But she said, sometimes, don't you think sometimes we self-destruct just so we can write? I was like, maybe that's what it was. But
Maybe.
writing really became like a replacement for me and all the times and
Mm,
hours that I didn't know what to do with myself, I would
yeah.
write. And
Yeah.
I had like a new lease on life kind of. And so I had all these
Yes.
ideas and so much,
Energy.
insight. Yeah, and energy, exactly. And I signed up. I thought I was going to write a self-help book, like a just here's how I stopped drinking. And then I met
Yeah.
Anna David, and
Oh yeah, yeah, I love
yeah.
her.
And so I signed up for a memoir course, and I literally had to Google what is a memoir.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
what?
that's fair.
And so then I started realizing like just how powerful storytelling is, and just how
Hmm.
like I had a background in working in mental health and therapy. And it was wonderful and great, but I didn't, you can't really share stories. It's unprofessional to,
Right.
like tell your story to a client who's coming for help.
Yeah.
And but I love reading stories, like sit me
Yeah.
down like a child and tell me your story and I'm going to be in awe, I just want to hear what happened. And so I just found this to be like really a replacement for drinking, and writing just became this huge passion that I had and still have. And
Yeah.
so writing the book was really, really fun. I mean, for the most part, like,
Yeah, let's be real, it's hard.
right, exactly. It was super hard,
It's so
but
hard.
it was great to just be able to kind of put this story on paper. and
Oh.
and I think because my story is so basic, like it's the most boring story, like I'm a
Mm.
pretty basic person,
Relatable though, so
right.
relatable.
And I think people maybe needed to hear that because, I did with the whole time, the intention is just like, if one person reads this and it just even doesn't change their life, but just gives them some insight, like that
Yeah.
would just be a dream. And really,
Mm.
since the books come out, like I get so much feedback about that. Like you just changed my whole
Yeah.
perspective, and um, you
Wow.
know, and so it's been just really, really awesome. And I had the worst vulnerability hangover after the book was published,
What do you mean?
just kind of like I just wrote my whole story. Well, first of all, there was a lot of like, why am I writing a book about myself?
Oh.
Like I'm not a president, I'm not a famous person. Like, what am I thinking here?
Imposter syndrome.
Yes. And then once it came out, like just some of my most tender moments I've just, put out there for the whole world, not the whole world, a very small amount of
Well,
people. Yeah, anybody to read.
anybody can have access to it.
Yeah. And it felt really I was just, I had a little bit of a kind of like a letdown after that. But, then
I
people
hear that's
were,
common.
yeah, I think it's really common. I try to tell people because I work with some writers now, and I'm just like, you have to build up a little resiliency to that, and
Okay.
um feeling like, and just any kind of work, like if you were to paint a picture or show someone something that put together, you feel like a little like, hey, look at my thing, and you want people to be like, yeah, that's awesome, but sometimes they're like, not.
Did you get criticism?
I got a little bit of criticism.
Ouch.
Yeah, but I mean, it really is, it's okay. That is something that before all of this, I would have crushed me. I would have been in bed under my covers, drinking away the day, trying to minimize the embarrassment. But now I can
Yeah.
handle that, and it's been another really great growing experience.
Wow. Do you feel like you have a stronger sense of your self-worth and who you really are? Is that what it, inoculates you a little bit from
I think,
the criticism?
yeah, I think so. And just knowing that I'm definitely going to make mistakes and I could have done this better, but I'm human, and giving myself grace, which I never gave myself before, and knowing that my
Oh,
intentions are good. Like I'm not trying to hurt anyone, I'm just trying to
right.
do my little tiny piece, and I'm going to do it messy.
Yeah, I like that idea of being able to do it messy. I know I'm going to piss off a lot of people with my book because
Yeah.
I'm going to be calling out some stuff about, the traditional way of getting sober. There's some problems with it, but I think if people are aware going in, but I think that's really interesting that you were able to have the courage. I feel like it takes so much courage to just get out there and tell your story. But I mean, how amazing is that now there's a story like yours out there for other women? Because listen, the women are going to be coming up behind you.
Yeah.
And they're gonna look just like you, and they need to hear. I love this idea of recovering out loud because they need to, like when you got sober, your image of the middle-aged man smoking a
Yeah.
cigarette, like why I don't know why we all have that image, but
I don't
that's the
either.
image. That's the image I had too. I remember going to an AA picnic when I was 14. My mom dated somebody that was in the program, and an old guy got up and told his story, and then a young woman got up and I was in shock. I was like,
Yeah.
I did not, even at 14, I was like, I didn't know that young women could have a problem with alcohol.
Yeah.
It was
Well,
shocking.
and I don't know about you, but I'm kind of like submersed now into the whole like perimenopause,
Oh,
menopause.
girl.
And so now I'm realizing too, like the effects of alcohol just on that for anybody, like goodbyes to sleeping, like all kinds of like issues that you can have, that it can have on your hormones in general. And so, yeah, like when I think about, I don't know why I had this image.
Yeah,
And so many more women are getting sick and dying from alcohol. And I wonder if it's
I
that
know.
that same kind of idea. And so, um, yeah, I'm just out there, like I said, sharing
Yeah,
my story and just hoping that it's just changing a little bit of the perception.
100% is changing it. And I don't know if you ever heard that story about the guy that goes to the beach and there's all these starfish on the shore, and
Mm.
there's a little boy and he's throwing him back in the water, and he was like, but there are millions of them. Why are you even bothering? And he's like, well, it matters to that one.
Oh, yeah, that's
Isn't
such a
that
great
sweet?
story. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh, I
It
love
matters
that.
to that one. And it's
Yeah.
like, we do our part and we tell our stories, and maybe it doesn't reach the masses, but it matters to the one that it does reach.
Yeah, and I mean that's I think about your podcast, and I talk about this a little bit, like when you're dealing with this, again, like me, because people hadn't approached me, this wasn't like a public thing, so it was a
Right.
very lonely thing, and I
Yeah.
needed strangers. Like I couldn't go to my
Yeah.
family and my friends with this because I wasn't ready to kind of talk to them about it. I needed the strangers out there to show me a little bit of the way so that I could,
Yeah.
get there. And so I just really feel like that's what I'm doing is giving back because a stranger, I mean, I'm getting
Yeah.
emotional just
I
talking about it.
know, I know. Because a stranger was there for
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
Yeah. That is, and it's such a lonely place, and
Yeah.
it's so funny how we really do all feel like we're unique. Like I'm the only one that
Oh,
feels this way.
I know. It's crazy.
Yeah, but nobody, people don't really talk about how dark it gets, but it gets
Right.
dark. It
Yeah,
gets really dark.
absolutely.
Well, listen, I am so grateful that we got a chance to spend some time. What a beautiful share. I really appreciate you. I might ask you to hang tight when we end because I have a couple questions about book
Oh
publishing.
yeah, I know, I'm like, I really want to tell her this, but I know not to do it right now.
Yeah, don't hang up when we end.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
I want to I'm gonna make sure that people do two things. I want to make sure they get your book, so I'll leave links in the show notes to get your book. But where can they find it? Do you have a website or
Yeah, I mean the book is also it's on Amazon. I do have a
perfect?
website. It's SP Samantha Perkins aliveaf.com. And then I have a little Substack where I'm writing there, but you can
Oh,
find all that
nice.
information on my website.
Okay, I'll leave links to your website and I'll actually leave a link to the actual book in the show
Okay.
notes to your Amazon so we could just like
Yeah.
as the easier we can make it for people to, like one or two clicks to
Yeah.
get the book is awesome. But I'm also going to leave a link to your TED Talk in
Oh
there
yeah.
as well because God, that I just feel like that is such a huge accomplishment.
Thank you. Thank you so
Yeah.
much.
Well done on all the work that you're doing. I really appreciate you.
Same, likewise.
Thanks. All right, we'll talk again soon.
Okay.